Welcome back to Fantasy Fights. This time we're going to take a look at the top 10 heavyweights of the 1970s going up against the top 10 heavyweights of the 1980s. At number 10 in my rankings of the 1970s and 1980s, Jerry Coetzee goes up against Trevor Berbick. These two fighters could have very well fought in the 1980s because Jerry Coetzee was at his peak in the 1980s, but they never faced one another, mainly because Coetzee fought in the WBA camp, Berbick fought in the WBC camp. So they never came up against each other. Coetzee is going to gain his ranking mainly from this fight right here in 1979 against former heavyweight champion Leon Spinx. This was a WBA semifinal fight for the vacant Muhammad Ali title. And this is going to be quite a shocker in that Coetzee knocks him out in the first round. Coetzee goes on and loses in the finals against John Tate. Berbick, here he is in action against Muhammad Ali in his last fight. Berbick wins a 15-round decision. Berbick fought just about the best boxing had during his day. Fought Larry Holmes, fought Mike Tyson. And, of course, as I said, he comes away with a 15-round decision over Muhammad Ali. Who would you pick in this fight, Coetzee or Berbick? At number 9, Ernie Shavers from the 1970s goes up against Tim Witherspoon of the 1980s. This will be a great matchup, boxer against slugger. You can see their key fights. This is Ernie Shavers in Madison Square Garden in his first round knockout of Jimmy Ellis. Remember, Shavers has one of the highest knockout ratios in the history of the heavyweight division. Ellis is unloading on him here. Ellis is the former WBA champion in 1968 when he defeated Jerry Corey. And you can see he's wailing on Shavers. This is typical of an Ernie Shavers fight. Shavers is always in a fight because of this. See that uppercut? One punch, knockout. And that's what you have to keep in mind when he enters the ring. He was not a bad boxer either, and he could take a good punch. But his power was what got him by. Now his opponent is going to be Tim Witherspoon. Here's Witherspoon fighting against some of the top fighters of his day. He went 12 rounds and lost a split decision against Larry Holmes. In the 1980s, he fought well into the 1990s, but in the 1980s, he fought all the top fighters, won 2 different belts, was very smooth. He was fought out of Philadelphia. Who are you taking in this fight? It's a tough choice. Ernie Shavers or Tim Witherspoon? Number 8 is Ron Lyall versus Michael Dokes. Be a great matchup. Boxer against slugger. 1970s against the 1980s. Both of them were similar size, 219 to 216, which is somewhat surprising. This is Dokes in action. Notice the lightning hands that he had. As I talked about in the 1980 video, he did suffer a few losses because of his dependency on drugs, cocaine in particular. But he was said to have the best or fastest hands in the division. Here he is against Razor Ruddock. Tex Cobb. Dynamite Dokes. He was an outstanding fighter. How's he going to do against the power of Ron Lyall? And here is Ron Lyall showing his tremendous ability to take a punch and dish it out against George Foreman. Remember, prior to his retirement, his first retirement, George Foreman only lost 2 fights. And that was to Jimmy Young and Muhammad Ali. And Ron Lyall had Foreman on the canvas on 2 occasions in this fight in Las Vegas in 1975. Toe-to-toe action. How's he going to do against Michael Dokes and his fast hands? And they were of similar size, as I said. Lyall's ability to take a punch kept him in every fight. At number 7, Jerry Corey goes up against Jerry Coetzee. Coetzee, as you recall, was ranked in the top 10 in the 1970s at number 10. Notice the difference in size: 6'1", 196 for Corey. Coetzee 6'3.5", 222, 81-inch reach compared to Corey's short 72-inch reach. What you need to understand is Corey was used to fighting larger fighters. Here he is in action against Mac Foster in Madison Square Garden. Foster came in, I believe, 24-0 with 24 knockouts. Never tasted the canvas and went up against Jerry Corey. This is one of the reasons Jerry Corey was a crowd favorite. Fast hands, deadly fighter. Remember, he knocked out Ernie Shavers in the first round. He beat Ron Lyall. So size is not going to be that big a problem for him. Even though he's given up about 24 pounds in the fight, he's going to be able to match up against Jerry Coetzee. And he finishes off Mac Foster here, as I said, in Madison Square Garden. So big fight, thrust Corey into the top 2 in the world at that time by Ring Magazine. Corey could really take a punch. As you recall, the Achilles heel of Jerry Corey was cuts. Now we're looking at Jerry Coetzee. Notice the reach. This is him against Mike Weaver. There he is knocking out Ronaldo Snipes. Coetzee was a solid fighter. He's going to have a big wingspan advantage over Corey. Here he is against Pinklin Thomas, another top heavyweight. Who do you going to pick in this, Corey or Coetzee? At number 6 is the highly anticipated matchup between Jimmy Young and Pinklin Thomas. Young representing the 70s, Thomas the 1980s. Thomas is going to have about a 6-pound advantage over Jimmy Young. Didn't really matter to Jimmy Young. Here he is against Foreman, one of the biggest fighters of the 1970s, and he wins a 12-round decision in this fight. This is in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and as I said, before his first retirement, Foreman only lost 2 fights to Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Young. He's a quality fighter. How would he handle Pinklin Thomas's jab is the big question. He was a very smooth fighter, avoided contact, cagey, crafty. He knew every trick in the book. Remember, he lost a close decision to Muhammad Ali and Ken Norton, 2 of the top heavyweights of the 1970s. Now let's look at Pinklin Thomas, and of course Thomas is known mainly for his jab, incredible jab, in his prime. And his prime was not long, much like Jimmy Young. Here he is against Tim Witherspoon. He could throw the right, it's pretty strong, but that jab is what won most of his fights. Who are you taking in this fight? Is Jimmy Young going to be able to outbox Pinklin Thomas? What a great fight at number 5. Ken Norton against Evander Holyfield. Norton was in his prime. He held a win over Muhammad Ali. He won the WBC belt in 1978 over Jimmy Young and lost a split decision to Larry Holmes. Holyfield did not win the championship until 1992. So in the late 1980s, he was just an emerging talent coming up from the cruiserweight division. He was not in his prime. And here you can see him against Pinklin Thomas. He was putting on weight every time he fought, but he still was a pretty small heavyweight. At number 4, Larry Holmes of the 1970s goes up against Mike Weaver of the 1980s. These two actually fought in 1979, with Holmes winning a 12-round knockout. It was very, very close fight. Weaver hurt Holmes in the 11th round. Very competitive fight. Both are going to go on into the 80s and be outstanding fighters after that 79 fight. Here's Holmes in action against Ken Norton. He won a split decision over 15 rounds. And here's Weaver in action against Jerry Coetzee, who we saw earlier. Weaver puts him out in the 13th round. So this is a pretty easy one to pick. We're going with Larry Holmes on this one, I'll tell you ahead of time. And this is Weaver knocking out Coetzee. Number 3, Joe Frazier goes up against Michael Spinx. Frazier held the heavyweight title from 70 to 73. Michael Spinx held the title he gained from Larry Holmes in 1985 to 1988 when he lost the title to Mike Tyson. These two are about the same size. Spinx had an impressive record of 31-1. Joe Frazier 32-4-1. Great matchup. Here's Joe Frazier going up against Jimmy Ellis in his 1970 title fight. He won by 5th round knockout. Joe would constantly put pressure on Spinx. Spinx would have to be able to deal with this nonstop. Spinx, on the other hand, was very awkward, had pretty good power, knocked out some good fighters, in particular Jerry Cooney. Frazier's going to have the advantage in close. Question is, could Spinx stay away? Here is Spinx against Jerry Cooney in his knockout victory in 1987, I believe it was. And you notice size doesn't really matter to Michael Spinx. Very fast hands, unorthodox, hit you with either hand. Be a great matchup against Joe Frazier at their peak. Who you picking in this one? Got to decide. At number 2, George Foreman and Larry Holmes. Foreman is going to make the 1990s top 10. I believe he comes in at number 5. Larry Holmes is going to make the 1970s top 10. I believe he comes in at number 4. So this is a great matchup. The boxer against the slugger. And here's Holmes against Jerry Cooney when he was in his prime in 1982. Here he is against Tim Witherspoon. You can see his ability to move, box, and jab. This fight is actually on YouTube. I did a fight between these two guys in their prime. And, of course, in this situation, they're both in their prime. And there's Holmes showing you some of his power. Here's George Foreman in his 1973 heavyweight matchup against Joe Frazier, in which he obtained the title. A 2nd round knockout. Very impressive. Question is, could Holmes stay away from this power? And as I said, I go into detail in the YouTube video on this fight, and I come up with a winner. There's Frazier trying to recover. This was not the first time Frazier had been on the canvas. Oscar Bonavena had put him down twice in their 1966 fight, in which Frazier won. In dealing with Foreman, you're going to have to deal with an overpowering onslaught. He could take a punch and he could deliver it. Holmes would have to stay moving and stay away from the power. George Foreman was definitely in his prime in this Frazier fight when he won the title, and Frazier has had enough. Who are you picking in this one? At number 1, Muhammad Ali goes up against Mike Tyson. Ali was not in his prime in the 1980s. He's also ranked in the 1990s by me. He's ranked number 4, but he was nowhere near the fighter in the 90s that he was in the 80s. Had better head movement, better condition, more aggressive, everything. Stay tuned for my picks on all 10 fights. And please hit the like button and subscribe. And please let me know your comments on who you think would win. Stay tuned. Here's a rundown of the top fighters and their matchups. And you've got to pick which decade comes out on top. Who has the most winners? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we come with my selections. I'm going to go with Coetzee against Trevor Berbick, Shavers over Witherspoon, Dokes over Lyall, Jerry Corey, 12-round decision over Jerry Coetzee, Young over Thomas, a close one, Norton in a very close fight against Holyfield, Larry Holmes, who fought Weaver, Joe Frasier over Michael Spinx in an 8th-round knockout, George Foreman gets a decision over Larry Holmes, and Muhammad Ali is going to lose to Mike Tyson. Remember, this is not prime Muhammad Ali. And the 1970s wins 8-2. Thanks for watching.